Welcome to Define Your Path with DocV, bringing you real talk with global thought leaders to inspire hearts and minds for sustainable breakthroughs and profitability for your life and business. Here's your host, DocV.
Hi there. I'm Dr. Virginia LeBlanc, also known as DocV, the Pivot Maestro. Welcome to the Define Your Path podcast for those seeking to define their own path into purposed entrepreneurship. This is a show about transforming perspectives, as well as inspiring and motivating you to think without that box by exposing you to global thought leaders, change agents, and legacy builders across industries like my guest today on how exactly they successfully define their path in life and business to profitability and sustainable wins. At Defining Paths, we always operate in truth, transparency, and love to help you navigate the waters of your life and put you back in business. And the Define Your Path podcast is absolutely no different. It all starts with the heart condition, folks, and in the subconscious mind. Will you be the captain or the crew is the question. Today's spotlight is with Doug Stoddard, and I am so excited to introduce Doug to you. And for those of you who don't know him, you will know so much more about him at the end of this conversation, and you will want to absolutely connect with him. Doug is the habit breaker expert who coaches and trains CEOs and entrepreneurs and their teams to identify and shift their habits of thinking that drive self-deception and cost them 6, 7, and even 8 figures, as well as relationships, fulfillment, and confidence. As a habit breaker expert for over 10 years and his education in corporate training, he lives and breathes habit management. After developing a deep awareness of the habits that were his strengths and those that were sabotaging his efforts, Doug became inspired and spent hundreds of hours in research, training, and coaching to create his very own unique success system called the Infinite Success Living Formula. It's a step-by-step process that will empower you to cross that gap of where you are to where you want to be with ever increasing levels of ability and ever increasing levels of ease, folks. Whether you want to break free of the negative self-talk or low confidence and experience the kind of joy you desire the right way, Doug will take you through those steps, that next step, with you in designing your success formula. Doug, welcome to the show, my friend. My fast friend, I might say.
Thank you, Virginia. I am really excited to be here. And I especially enjoyed our little conversation before we started today.
Yes. Likewise, Doug. So happy to have you here. And we look forward to hearing your story, of how you face your fears, to love the skin you're in and pivot into pursuing your passion and soul purpose. So we ask our guests 2 questions on the show, and then you and I will just kind of riff between those 2 questions. So the first is, how have you defined your path? And the second is, how do you help others define theirs? So the spotlight is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we all have a journey. And so often in our journeys, we have life experiences that, man, I don't want this experience.
Yes.
I don't like it. I don't want to be here. It's hard. It's challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been this, after I got in 20 and 25 and my spirit came back into my body, it kind of leaves when we're teenagers.
It takes a break.
Takes a break. Where am I? Anyway, once I kind of got on the right path, I felt like I was always the guy who could take something from nothing and create something that I felt was significant and made a difference. And that's how I saw myself. That was my identity. But then some things started happening in my life, like I started getting some very challenging health issues. Mm-hmm. And I had 10 chronic illnesses going on at one time when I was 38. I felt like I was dying. Wow. And that was not fun. I can tell you that right now.
No. Mm-hmm.
And but it was the catalyst that got me into what I do today. It was one of those moments that says, hey, you need to start checking into your health and take charge of it.
Yes.
Which got me into the right road.
Mm-hmm.
And so we created a business that I thought was really successful. And at the same time, we have 6 beautiful children and 19 grandchildren.
Wow.
And everybody's saying, boy, you're a great dad. And your wife, Susan, she's just a great mom. And you have great kids. Well, that was true. But then we had 2 of them that didn't want anything to do with us for 9 years.
Mm.
That hurt.
Yes.
It hurt in several ways, Virginia, because the first way was all of a sudden it kind of shattered my identity that I was a great dad.
Mm-hmm.
And when we build our identities on what other people say,
yes,
or our accomplishments, all those things, then they can get shattered really easily.
Mm-hmm.
So the second thing that was happening parallel to this issue with our 2 kids was we had created what I thought was a pretty good business. We had employees. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was successful. And it was growing, and I was having a lot of fun impacting people. I was doing trainings, and I was looked upon as a leader and all that. But the ownership of the company we were working with was caught embezzling.
Oh, wow.
This was years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the lawsuits against them took them down, but we were so closely connected to them, it took us down too. And we lost our employees, and we went into bankruptcy and lost our business.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've got these two paths with things going on with our kids and things that are happening with our business.
Mm-hmm.
And it just shattered all my identity of where I was trying to find my worth. And suddenly I was lost. See, when we base our identities on things that can change so quickly,
yes,
we can easily feel lost.
Mm-hmm.
Have you experienced that before, Virginia?
I was about to say I can absolutely relate and agree, particularly when we were younger, at a younger age. But even as we grow and, with all the wisdom we think we've acquired.
Which I'm learning isn't that much. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, so these 2 things kind of came together, and the effects of it lasted for over 9 years. And so now here I am, I'm trying to look like I'm a 10, the guy that's got it all together.
Yes,
successful, every great dad, all this stuff. But inside I'm feeling like a 2.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many entrepreneurs, people who are building their business, or people who are trying to have influence and impact in a positive way in the world. And I think a lot of times we feel like 2s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we don't know what to do with that. We just fight against it. And we keep putting on our happy, smiley face when we go out into the world. That reminds me of what one man said who was very successful. And he was asked by a mentor of mine, he says, do you ever cry? And the man said, all the time. Just, I don't let other people see it. And I think inside of us, at least for me at this time, Virginia, I was crying a lot.
Yes.
And everything I tried to do just seemed like I'd hit a wall and fall down. Hit a wall, fall down.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to connect with these 2 kids. I could have wrung their necks, I didn't know what we had done. And I was angry and resentful at those people who had gone, were not honest and So all this was going on. And like I said, it went on for about 9 years. But in the middle of this, and here's one of the key points I've learned from this in defining my path. There's got to be a time in our lives when we start wondering about, what does surrender mean to me? Because I was just trying to make everything happen. I was trying to force it to happen. I was trying to force people to like me, to, whatever it was.
Yes.
And it just kept pushing away what I was really looking for. I think what I wanted more than anything, Virginia, I just wanted to be peaceful.
Doug. You have me on the edge of my seat.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be at peace. I was so tired of all this self-talk going on, all the reaction to emotions.
Yes.
I was a guy, I could react faster than anybody else.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted. And so when I began to surrender, then things began to change. So a question, those who are listening to this, ask yourself, what does surrender mean to you? What does it mean? What does it look like? And I think it's different for everybody. But one thing I had to surrender to is I didn't have influence with those 2 children. And I've talked with a lot of people. I've coached very successful people. And one of the reoccurring themes of what is painful to them are relationships. And time after time, they tell me about relationship with a significant other, a spouse or a child or their dad or their mom. I just had a situation, one of the clients I was coaching, who didn't really have a relationship with their dad. But as we went through the coaching and how to connect at a deep level so that there is a place in which they could both come together and just start the healing process, she started to do that. And she brought her dad to her property, and she had a place there in which he could live. I think he's there 3 months and he passed away. And I asked her, I said, what was it? Do you have regrets? And she said, oh, there are a few, but most of all, I have love. And so I think that's an area that a lot of people, there's not much peace inside because of the relationships, not knowing how to connect with people. So anyway, that's where I was.
Yes.
Would you like me to share with you how I finished it? Or?
Yes, please. I mean, because I'm riveted over here, and I'm relating with the example you just gave of the woman who reconnected with her father, and I had a similar story with my biological father. So yes, please. And then you said something very poignant here that I want to go back and revisit, and that has to do with surrender. But please, yes.
Okay, so it's interesting. God said, well, I think maybe he's learned enough lessons here. So let's start moving.
Have to learn that lesson, Doug. Learn the lesson.
My head hurt so bad, all the wall pounding I was doing. But so he introduced me to a guy who became my mentor. His name is Tom. I love Tom. This was probably about 10, 11, 12 years ago. And one day Tom comes to me and he says, hey, listen, I met this guy that is teaching me how to connect with people at a deep level. So I perked up, and his business started growing. And each week we would talk, he was happier. He was more peaceful. He was passionate. He hadn't had this kind of passion for a long time. And each week he said, Doug, you really ought to learn about these principles. Like, no. That went on for 6 months. You ever done that before? The answer is there.
Yeah. Right there.
Right there.
Staring you in the face.
Yeah, we're slamming the door.
Yep.
And I'm getting angrier and angrier, and he's happier and happier. And I can't believe I did it. For 6 months I did that. And then finally I peeked around the corner, and I started connecting with this person. And what he taught me was really critical. It's about habits of thinking. And from the time we're really young, we start reacting to things. I had a dog bite when I was 10 years old that got infected. It was very severe. Lots of shots, very traumatic. And then I had a bully, 10-year-old bully started pounding on me every day. And that was traumatic. And so I created a pattern of thinking in which run, don't deal with it. Clear through my high school years, I quit. And that's a habit of thinking. And when we create those kind of things, it's stored in a neural pathway in your brain. Science can measure those. And when life shows up, it has a little trigger on that gate that's in front of this little groove in your brain. And the trigger's connected to whatever your dog's story is. And when life shows up, it pushes that button and opens up. And this is what a lot of people don't understand, Virginia, is that the brain starts dumping chemicals into this neural pathway, and you start feeling things. Fear, anger, resentment, overwhelm, underwhelm,
Right.
all kinds of things. And you leave the gate open for over 90 seconds, the brain will begin to turn chemicals into thoughts. And we start here our habits of thinking, what's wrong with me? Or what's wrong with them? The comparison, the judgment. That's what I was going through when I was a 2, when I felt like a 2. Was all of these things being triggered inside me, creating emotions, creating all this negative self-talk and judgment and criticism. And then what it does is it creates distortion. Remember, all of a sudden our identities are shattered.
Yes.
We see ourselves in a false light. We see others in a false light. We start seeing their behaviors instead of seeing their humanity. And then what happens is we also distort the situations. So that's what's going on inside of people's minds. I call it, they have habit hangovers.
I love that. Habit hangovers. I love that.
Yeah. And we go through the day. Sometimes you ever have days where it feels like you're fighting off the discouragement, you're fighting off the resentment or whatever it is, and it just keeps happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just today, as we talked about the first show. Yes.
Okay. Well, that's what I help people solve. So that was my journey. When I began to surrender, then things started to happen. And I've got a beautiful relationship with those 2 kids now.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So
absolutely wonderful. Doug, thank you for just sharing. I mean, such difficult times in your life, and the trauma that you've overcome. And you said something earlier. I want to talk about the surrender and how you help people do that with your Infinite Success Living Formula. But also, just it seems that when you surrender into the pain point, is that the key? When you surrender into that pain point, then, you start to reverse that process or that neural path that has been formed. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, so let you tell me how you help people with this.
So surrender. Well, first of all, I'm a habit breaker expert, right? But the truth is you can't break habits. Isn't that interesting? People say, "Oh, habit breaker expert." Then they start telling me all these bad habits they got. And they want to know the one secret thing they can do to get rid of these bad habits tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to deal with them anymore.
Right.
And
no such thing.
What?
No such thing, huh?
No, there isn't, because the brain doesn't forget.
Yes.
All you can do is learn how to create new pathways. But you've got to train the brain to go there. It will do it because it does create sabotaging habits thinking. It will also create good ones. And we have many good ones. The negative ones are just so loud.
Yes.
We forget the good that we have. And so, so surrender. So often, Virginia, we, especially entrepreneurs and leaders, they can easily create expectations.
Mm-hmm.
They can see it. It's a gift. But they're also want it now.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a gap between where they live and where they live in their brain.
Mm-hmm.
And that gap, how we manage that gap, will determine our joy in our lives, our confidence, our passion, what really motivates us,
Mm-hmm.
how to get that passion that, oh man, I want to go do this. It governs our relationships. Everything in our life is impacted by expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can learn, for me, surrender was learning that I didn't have to have the answers to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have any control of the outcomes.
That's huge. Yes.
And we can see the outcomes
Mm-hmm.
in our minds. We got a great imaginations. We have great ideas. And then we try to control everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when it doesn't go according to an expectation, we get all wound up and all frustrated and all these emotions start happening, right? The distortion happens. And we usually look at ourselves as being flawed, broken, something's wrong with me.
Yes.
Which none of it is true.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been on a really deep journey, especially lately, about what's the next level of surrendering from Doug Stoddard. And what I'm learning more and more is that God opens the door and I do the work with him.
Mm-hmm.
When I try to open the doors, it frustrates the process.
Mm-hmm.
When I expect God to open the doors and to do the work, while I just sit back, come on, God. It's very frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
So surrender to me, and this is what my mentor shared with me, is surrender is working with God and allow him to open the doors, and then I step in with him, serve people and to bring light to them.
I love it. I love it. And then that's where the ever-increasing levels of ability and ever-increasing levels of ease comes in, I assume.
Yeah, because we're not trying to control everything.
Mm-hmm.
It sure takes a lot of pressure off me when I get so strung up about what's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
I lose my energy. I lose my focus. I lose my joy. I lose my passion. I lose my hope. But when I can simply reach out and say, okay, it's going to work out, just keep moving. And the other issue most entrepreneurs have is they're trying to take so big steps.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest joys I've learned over the last 2 years is how to microsize my steps
Mm-hmm.
to maximize my joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I love celebrating Doug Stoddard. I'll do something really small and I'll sit there, way to go, Dougie.
I love it. I love it. Doug, I tell you, I need to take a page out of your book because, my toes are hurting a little bit over here because I'm a recovering perfectionist, I must admit. And that control thing is huge. And particularly for entrepreneurs, people who do what we do. I mean, of course, we have that go-getter spirit, that fight spirit and surrendering. I tell you, that's the key. That's the huge part, Yeah, such an aha for me today and a revelation. So I truly thank you, my friend, for sharing this. Any other words of wisdom or thoughts that you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, once again, is you don't have to know the path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You just need the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And if you will identify what your habits of thinking are that are actually driving your life and the emotions, it's what triggers us to react to emotions, to react to what people say, all those kinds of things. If you simply learn what those kinds of things are that are driving your life,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then learn how to take charge.
Yeah.
And get the focus off of you.
Yes. Mm.
And it's like you and I are talking about. Here's my last words of advice. Something that has totally changed my life is when I surrendered and began to ask very seriously in my prayers, God, who is it today that I can serve?
Mm.
And if you'll put them in my path,
Mm-hmm.
I'll serve them. And I found, like I said, I have 16 or 19 grandchildren. The other day, I got the impression I need to reach out to a couple of my granddaughters who are in their 17, 18 years, 19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I simply started sending texts to my grandchildren who are above 12.
Mm-hmm.
I think it made a difference that they knew their grandpa was thinking about them.
Mm-hmm.
Another day I was walking and I felt impressed to go a different direction. And as I was walking, I felt impressed to call a man who had lost his wife to COVID.
Mm-hmm.
About the same time he was diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
And he needed to talk. And I felt the impression 3 times calling. I finally did. I think it made a difference. So bring it down to smaller size, identify what your habits of thinking are, and simply seek for who you can serve today.
Mm.
And your life will change. So, but thank you so much.
Doug, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for just making that plain for us, pouring out your heart and just making it simple, a simple formula for us to follow. Thank you so much for being our spotlight today. This was truly a divine appointment for me alone, if no one else, and I'm sure it's been for other people.
Could I share one last thing?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Please.
So we have a tool. Some people would call it an assessment, but it's 100% accurate in identifying how people think, not what they think, but how they think. They're neural pathways that get triggered. And in 15 minutes online, it's very simple. People say, how does it give me so much clarity about me in just 15 minutes with what? There's no questions. You're just moving words and statements around. And so with that information, we can quickly help them to identify what the triggers are.
Mm-hmm.
We can help them to identify why they need to be right. If they're in comparison, if they're in judgment, what's blocking their ability to connect with people?
Mm-hmm.
How do they see themselves in self-worth? It'll show them how do they look at discipline and structure. And hey, as entrepreneurs, we don't like structure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Talk about it, Doug.
I got to do it this way. Anyway, so I'm offering for people who are on this journey and want more clarity. Hey, there'll be a link here where they can get on, right? And just reach out to me. And we'll talk for 30 minutes, no cost. And then if it makes sense, they can take this profile and then we'll go through it with them. So that was a big step in my journey.
Yes.
It really helped me out.
Awesome. I'm going to get on and take that myself. I tell you, I learned so much from every guest on this show, and you have just brought so much light and life to me today. And I sincerely thank you, my friend. I really do. And so the audience, the best way to connect with you or follow you on social media, is it by going to www.dougstoddard.com?
Yes. And there they can, I even have habit breaker tips if they'd like to get that every day by text or twice a week by text. But they can also schedule a time to meet with me.
Awesome.
And I'd love to serve people. So.
Absolutely. You truly have a servant heart, a servant leader you are. And folks, you need to connect with Doug. Have a discovery call. Absolutely take the habit profile, have the 30-minute consultation. It's free. What do you have to lose other than redefine your habits and change those habits and become a better person? So, and again, you'll be able to read Doug's full bio on our Define Your Path podcast platform. You'll be able to connect with him that way as well. Doug, anything else you want to say about all that?
No, just realize
awesome.
You're more than your habits of thinking are telling you.
Yeah. Oh, that look, I need you to say that again. You are more than your
habits of thinking are telling you.
I love it. I love it. So folks, Doug just told you, think without a box. Folks, be sure to visit our virtual home to see what we're up to at definingpaths.online. We have a new face coming very, very soon with a very simple and plain way to help you define your path, whether it's personally, professionally, or in business. So I'd like to thank our Business Innovators Radio Network and our producer, Mike Saunders, for their amazing support and assurance that we may continue to bring you these quality, life-giving, and inspiring conversations like the one we just had with Doug Stoddard. Folks, keep coming back. Tell a friend. I'm DocV, the Pivot Maestro, and always your corner woman. Be true to you and define your path so that you may be your own boss in mind, body, soul, and business. We'll see you on our next episode. Thanks again, Doug.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Define Your Path with DocV. To learn how to see with true vision and define your path, visit definingpaths.online/true-vision.